Welcome back to the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and digital transformation.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Peggy Smedley Show. My first guest today is live in studio. He has more than 15 years of enterprise experience supporting small business and Fortune 500 customers. In his current role, he brings a unique set of leadership skills ranging from strategic business development to go-to-market strategy and technology insight to support the manufacturing, transportation, and CPG industries. Please join me in welcoming David Van Dorselaer, Industry Solutions GM for Manufacturing, Transportation, and CPG at AT&T Business. David, that's a mouthful. Welcome to the studio.
It sure is. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
David, you and I spent some time before the show just talking about everything that's going on from manufacturing to transport. We solved the world's problems. You and I don't have to do a show right now.
We don't. I think we handled it.
Well,
there's a lot going on right now.
But now we need to help all of our listeners figure it out. So we've got to help them because right now, one of the things you and I both agreed, the term digital transformation is overused. And people really don't know what that means right now, or they don't want to hear it anymore. What they really want are solutions. And you have helped a lot of companies figure out great ways to solve their problems. And we were talking about the many examples out there in manufacturing, transportation, and I think that's an exciting time when you can help companies figure out how to apply great solutions. Don't you agree?
I really do. I mean, digital transformation means so many things to so many different companies. And so as we're working with customers, we really try to focus on the business outcomes and the values that technology can do. If you work with, look from what we're bringing to the market, we can help connect most things to the Internet of Things. It's being able to provide the business value and helping customers see the outcomes that can be had with the IoT of today and in the future. And what we're starting to see is customers are at, they're starting sometimes their second generation of IoT implementations. Sometimes they're just starting their first one. So they're at different places in their journey, which is why we try to stay away from the digital transformation terms and really try to focus on the business outcomes and values that we can help.
Because they're at different points of the journey, does that become complicated? Because some people don't realize that word you just used, journey. It's not an end. You constantly have to reinvest because we use this term all the time, exponential change. Technology is constantly changing. So to really understand it, some people might really understand it, and it has to start at the top. Leadership has to get it and need to understand what they have to do and understand what's really going to happen for them and their organization.
That's right. And I think that's different for each company. And I'll just give you a couple of examples that I love to talk about because I think the use cases and the thematic approach is really what helps companies and listeners, frankly, bridge the gap, right, to understand what's happening today. And from a use case standpoint, I love to use the example of connecting and perhaps retrofitting things that are in the market today to provide insights. That's been going on for many years. But companies are now able to help drive new insights with that information and new business models. Okay, so as you're looking at manufacturing an item, retrofitting an item that's already out there, you can now move to an as-a-service model that you're bringing to your customers. And that's really interesting because instead of selling a manufactured item one time, you're able to create a monthly recurring revenue stream. And when we have conversations like that, so talking about the business outcomes, it becomes much more interesting than looking at the cost to deploy the solution because the cost is just one item. It's an important item in an ROI discussion, but it's really the overall impact that we can make to our customers. And I'll tell you, customers' experiences, the requirements are changing based on getting that real-time information that they're getting accustomed to in the market today.
Is it kind of having them kind of understand looking what their business was before and now what their business needs to be going forward instead of looking at it as a product as you just described? Because those trends you just described are what they see it being able to be. That service is now changing. So them being a manufacturer or a transportation, they have to think about where that, I always like to say that last mile delivery, that supply chain, what their company is going to be versus what it was. Isn't that how you have to help them understand a little bit?
It really is, and that goes back to your comment about the leadership and starting from the top down to drive that leadership cores and values to the field. And I'll give you an example of a company we worked with that was a wheelchair manufacturer that needed to change the way they were going to market and fundamentally move to an as a service model for providing wheelchairs. And that just provides great insight, right? Because now you're able to see location, the health of the wheelchair, and change the business model to more of an as a service model, monthly recurring item versus a one time um, one and done with the customer. This is able to provide more of an experience and a relationship with that customer that can go on for many years.
And that's hard for a manufacturer because when we think about that, they're not used to having relationships with customers. They're used to making a product and being done with it. So now to have a software as a service model for them is something that's new and it's hard. That reoccurring revenue stream is very profitable for them. But you also have to have the right employees with the right mindset to understand how to apply the Internet of Things. Doesn't it all have to come together when you're really kind of building that right solution model?
It does. There are thousands of manufacturing jobs that are open today in the United States because the requirements for technology and being able to use software are so important. And as you look at new technologies that are coming in, like AR, into the manufacturing floor, not only do the employees that create the code for the software need to exist, but the people on the manufacturing floor that are actually doing the work also have to be able to be more comfortable with software applications and using technology today than they did just 5 or 10 years ago.
So it's that whole concept now, not only is the technology, it's the type of technology and it's the skills because, a lot of manufacturers are used to just whacking this thing, getting that machine working, getting it up and running. But now they're seeing things that are so much more intuitive, innovative that they have to be able to work with. Talk about some more of those examples because I think those examples are something for someone listening that says, wow, my operation is unique and everybody thinks there's unique, but in reality, there's a nugget when you give a description that they go, well, we're kind of like that, but not. And they go, well, maybe I'm ready to do that, or I'm doing it and I didn't think I could go to the next level beyond where I am right now.
Well, I would start with a couple of examples really that are, I would say, more basic and have been around for a while. And then I'll move into a couple that are more futuristic. So,
Love that.
so first, I would start with, condition-based monitoring and predictive maintenance. Those use cases have been out for a while. Being able to understand the performance of a machine, to be able to provide more predictive maintenance on that particular machine, which will help the customer experience and also provide that insight to customers and the company that manufacture it to help make their products better in the future. So I think those are two examples of something that I think we all have some experience with. Although I'll tell you that customers are at different points in their journey on that as well. And we talked about this a little bit before the show. Not everybody has done condition-based monitoring or predictive maintenance. Those are still opportunities for many companies today and is something that we have a lot of experience with in helping customers get to that place. Something that's a little more futuristic that I think is here and with edge computing and 5G will be helpful is digital twin. I heard you were talking about that in some of your previous shows. Digital twin is something that a lot of manufacturers are talking about now. It goes back to being um, having more expertise on the floor to be able to analyze the twin with the actual good that you're comparing it to on the manufacturing floor. I think when you start to look at future networking capabilities with edge computing and 5G, that's where digital twin software will really take place and allow companies to go to the next level with IoT and helping build the next product in the future.
When we think about that and we talk about products of the future and you talk about digital twin, there's a lot there, but I think there's even more when we think about repair and maintenance and all the things like fleets now. Talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of great opportunities there because you're talking a lot about manufacturing, but there's a lot of opportunities in what transportation and fleets can do in this area when we talk about idle time and all the things that they can maintain in their equipment that we've let go for so long that we didn't know. But even more so in just now when we talk about digital twin and being able to maintain those pieces of equipment or teach someone from the way that they need to.
Well, the technology on transportation and the opportunities there are really significant. With the ability, as you mentioned, to get information off of the vehicle, off of the truck on idle time, on fuel consumption, you're providing a lot of insight into the trucking company to be able to provide insight into how that asset is performing. But also think about how that impacts driver retention. So, that technology, which is a huge problem in the transportation industry, if you have that insight into the vehicle, into the truck, you're able to now be more prescriptive, look at weather trends, look at how the wait time that the trucker is waiting at the location. Are there ways that you can improve that? All of that goes into driver retention because the drivers want to make sure they're maximizing their times. So if the companies have a really efficient um, fleet tracking system with the technology on top of it to be able to make the driver experience better, it not only provides the insight to the trucking company, it really helps drive driver retention and also provides that visibility into the supply chain to the end customer that's waiting on that good or service as well.
It connects the supply chain in a lot of different ways because I think it goes back now to both the driver when you're talking about the supply chain, but also about the health of the driver because you have new insights into how they're driving. But then I think it also goes back and connects it to manufacturing. There's a whole way because you just described supply chain. So there's a whole connection that I think we've never made before that we're able to because we have insights that we can put together and tie together that we never had before with all of the information when we talk about data and connecting it all. Is that really what's going to happen or is happening?
I think it is happening. I think it goes back to if you look at the software capabilities today that companies are bringing, including AT&T, really an open source model that allows for those APIs to come in and bring those solutions together to talk to each other. And that's where you can really gain that insight all the way from the shop floor. There's asset tracking capabilities that have been around for a long time in IoT, but now you're able to really understand where that asset is on the shop floor with more precise location, tie that into getting that production real time, so you're improving the manufacturing and then not only tracking the truck, as I just mentioned, but now you're able to track the trailer and also the goods and services inside of that through connected pallets. Those are out there today as well. So you start to be able to connect, as you mentioned, all the way through the supply chain and really give that visibility that customers are looking for.
Is there some things you and I were talking about this as well, that visibility sometimes makes people nervous because there's so much insight into that they're almost afraid of failure. They want to connect all these things, but then they really don't know what they're connecting. And yet at the same time, they're biting off so much and they're afraid to do it. So instead of doing it, they say, I'm not going to do it. It's just more. And then they don't do anything. And now they're waiting and time is passing them by and they're way behind the 8 ball here.
I agree. Start small. Start with something. Start with a use case that you're able to tie back to a return on investment. Oftentimes I see companies looking to start with, they're really starting with the end in mind and biting off a lot, but really sometimes just looking at a business process or an opportunity and building an ROI against that is a great way to get started. And I've seen many companies start with that, with something that they're able to prove out, demonstrate to leadership that they're actually able to improve and use that as a jump off point to really continue to go with IoT into the next generation of use cases that they can help their.
Is there an example you can give us? Because I think when people think about that, they go, yeah, everybody says that. I hear that a lot. Start small. But is there something that you say, here's an example of one. They started small and they just kept getting bigger and bigger. They learned and they thought, I'm going to do this. I started with a small app or I started something and I went bigger. Do you have an example that we could talk about? You don't have to give us their name, but I mean
Right.
something you could talk about.
Yeah, I think, we worked with a lot of customers in this space that were on multiple generations of IoT use cases. And what happens is the success for one starts to foster that replication inside of an organization. They start to talk, they're talking to their peers. That drives the next one. I will tell you, providing insight into goods and services that we use every day, like elevators, like escalators. You start with
It's a perfect example. I hear that a lot. Those are great ones.
you start with connecting it, getting that insight off of it. Now you're able to tell the mechanic what is wrong with that elevator before they go out to ensure they have the right tool, the right part when they're there. You then be able to take that use case into air conditioning items that they have for a building, into escalators as well. All of this creates a better experience for the customers that are in that building that rely on the use of that elevator and those escalators, as well as the company itself for cost, right? You're reducing the number of trips to be able to service an item, and you're able to be able to provide an overall better experience.
I think some of these companies are going to have to be pushed, to do these things. And like Walmart and some of the big giants are pushing companies into doing things that they're afraid of doing. Do you think that's what it's going to take to get some of these companies to invest in IoT, to do their supply chain? Because Walmart's dictating a lot. Will it take those big behemoths to say either you're in or you're out?
I think that's definitely a possibility, but I think that today there are so many opportunities just within inside of an organization, even smaller organizations, to get started and really begin to build that value. I think that overall, going the larger companies can certainly foster some of that through their supply chain agreements, things that they have in the market. But I think that there is enough justification on its own to be able to help really have even smaller companies really push inside of their own organization to do it. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing to me is the consumer expectations today are different. And I think that is what is going to drive it. We look at what do we expect now? I notice when I don't have the visibility into things that I've ordered today or the same experience that I've come accustomed to.
We're
And you notice that.
spoiled. We're spoiled. We want things, yeah, immediately. And that's why when people say what's the benefit of 5G, 5G is really, better than anyone, being AT&T. How is that going to change things? The immediacy of what 5G is going to do, not only from the consumer end, but from a business, and that's going to change that immediacy you just described.
Absolutely. With lower latency and higher bandwidth capabilities that 5G is going to bring, I think the opportunities are endless. With each G, we've seen a revolution, if you think about it.
But is it the same when we talk about what was 4G to 5G? We say we're not really comparing the same things. We're totally different on what we're going to be able to do in transportation. Is that correct?
It's correct. Yeah, I think, and it's, manufacturing, transportation, and the consumer experience is going to change with 5G. I think the opportunities are endless. So many things are out there we still haven't identified yet.
So sky's the limit. We don't even know yet.
We don't. We have some ideas. We definitely have a perspective. I think as you look at edge computing capabilities, bringing those closer to the edge allows companies to be able to do more computing there rather than sending that to the cloud. And I think that 5G capability is going to allow more flexibility for manufacturers to be able to pull machines out of service faster and provide more flexibility on the factory floor than they're used to today. I think it's also going to create more massive adoption of IoT because you're going to have more capabilities now to be able to put more devices within that 5G capacity. And I think you start to look at AR, VR type applications, it's going to be a great opportunity there as well. But for trucking and transportation, I think you start to look to vehicle type communications and being able to really get that insight around the United States that companies are looking for.
We talk about autonomous vehicles. It's one of the big things that we talk about with a lot of companies, that we are going to see autonomous vehicles. And we say, oh, it's great. But now all of a sudden that's been pushed back. Everybody's gotten a little gun shy about government regulations, but we see the benefits for those who are disabled, the elderly. Are we going to see 5G really propelling the autonomous world even more, or are we going to see that we've got the traditional car companies a little bit gun shy, or what's it going to take to make that happen?
I think it's still going to take time. I think you're looking at a level 2 autonomy right now today. It's going to take 10 to 15, 20 years to get to level 5. But I think with 5G and capabilities that come in, you're going to have more opportunities to continue to move up the spectrum on the levels of autonomy. But we're already seeing it today on the shop floor, manufacturing, autonomous robotics machines that are basically able to move items around, and heavy machinery as well is an area where we're seeing autonomous take place today. So I think 5G is going to only allow those use cases to continue to expand into the future.
What do you think are the biggest right now? What advice, I guess I would ask, that you should give manufacturers or fleet companies or CPG companies? I know the food industry is still very behind when it comes to wanting to take this leap. What advice would you give these companies in saying, hey, you need to be looking at implementing technologies, IoT, like we said, starting small, but even now, if they're still reluctant and they say, I don't know what I don't know yet, I don't know what the data is, I don't even know what kind of data I want to capture to be able, I still don't get it. How do you get them to say to get it? They understand logically, but they still don't know where to begin.
Well, we recommend starting with a pilot to be able to start to, be able to prove this out quickly. So take an example. We have models in place within 6 to 8 weeks that can not only connect the item, but also help customers prove out the business case. And so I think that's an opportunity to pick one area to start and to really come in, work with AT&T. We also offer immersion days, so where we go out to customer locations, we take our knowledge of IoT, 5G, the manufacturing floor, and we actually go spend a day in a life and look for the opportunities there to get started. But I think the first thing, and by the way, it's really a humbling experience when customers welcome you into their manufacturing floor to give you an opportunity to see how you can help them with their journey into the fourth industrial revolution. It's really helpful. But I would say start with an area, an opportunity where you can pilot and not have that pilot go on for a year with undefined success criteria.
As we look at this right now, we also see, and I don't know how much you've seen it, that we tend to have this unskilled right now workforce. We talked a little bit about that. Is there an opportunity here right now, because you mentioned AR and VR, to really kind of change that in a way that says, hey, with this new technology, you have an opportunity to change your workforce and to bring them into this new evolution a little bit to say, look, there's some great technology here. You have an opportunity to excite the industry, excite what you've done that somewhat has gotten a little stagnant in some ways, but this is really exciting times, especially with 5G.
I totally agree. I think that's an area of opportunity to actually bring people into the industry. So you think about how can we bring people into the industry? They're used to working with iPhones and iPads and gaming. Now you have those capabilities that are coming to the manufacturing floor, coming into the transportation environment. And I think that's actually going to be one of those keys to bring people into the industry. And I think companies are going to have that type of technology to be able to attract and retain workers in this space.
Is there something manufacturers need to look at again? When you look at all the things you say that they haven't done to need to evolve, because right now I think this is kind of a fun time for them right now. This is a time that they should think is exciting because they went through the downturn. They went and now they're in a growth opportunity right now. So should they be right now looking at this as being exciting instead of something to be afraid of? They should be looking at this as, wow, this is an opportunity to really revamp, revitalize, reinvigorate their operations.
It's an excellent opportunity. And I look at, about 80% of the items on a manufacturing floor today are not digitally enabled. So the opportunity,
Analog.
yeah, analog, the opportunities are endless. And I do think it's an exciting time. And I think if we were all to look at it from that lens and embrace the opportunity, I think you're able to really harness it, bring new people into the industry. And as you mentioned, it's a growth time in the industry. So I think the time is right now to start working on those types of opportunities in the market.
We've got about, I don't know, about a minute and a half left. Talk about what you guys do in Plano, because I think when you guys bring people in and you talk sometimes about successes, you show them how, talk about some of the things you guys have an opportunity to do there.
Well, in Plano, we have an AT&T Foundry that is focused on innovation and the Internet of Things. And this is where customers are able to come to AT&T, bring their potential use cases or problems that they're trying to solve, and work with our engineers there on location. And as you mentioned, the goal there is to prove it out, and then also if it doesn't work out, to be able to fail quickly. I think this helps customers kind of get their feet wet in IoT, but also really prove out the value and the ROI for our customers. And it's a great facility with really talented people there.
Do people like the idea of thinking failure, but this is a chance to be with AT&T to see what is the opportunities?
Well, I think it removes some of the concerns that you mentioned around the fear of failure. And so when you go in there and you understand that failing is okay in terms of being able to prove out that, yes, we can connect these things, but it didn't provide us the insight and value. When you see that culture, I think it really helps customers kind of ease up a little bit and be more open to trying new things and really pushing the boundaries.
Because that's what you have to do. We have to all be connected. This is a connected world, and we all need to understand that. Regardless of what you see, you're really going to have to see that that's the society that we're living, right?
That's right.
It's an exciting time. Well, 5G's coming.
It's on its way.
All right. Well, David Vance Dorselaer, Industry Solutions GM for Manufacturing, Transportation, and CPG at AT&T. Thank you so much for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, listeners. Well, we are out of time for this segment, but stick around and you can tweet at us at ConnectedWMag. I'm sure David would be happy to answer any of your tweets. So make sure you tweet at us again at ConnectedWMag. And AT&T. David, where should we send people for information that you have?
att.com or the hashtag at @ATTbusiness.
All right, there you go. So there you go. Check out their website. All right, stick around. We've got more to come right here on the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and digital transformation. And remember, with great technology comes great responsibility. We'll be right back after this commercial break.